Good morning, everyone. And it's lovely to speak with you and to introduce myself first of all. My name is Angela Mortimer, and I'm the co-founder of Angela Mortimer PLC, which was founded in 1976. During that time, 45 years, we've been involved in finding opportunities for executive assistants, PAs, EAs, to find opportunities for them here, in France, in Brussels, and in the States. And now, of course, with the virtual reach anywhere in the world, Russia, China, Hong Kong, wherever. So we're an international recruitment organization. It's a largely female organization. And of course, we've been helping largely females over the years because there aren't as many males occupying any of the roles I've just outlined. We've also moved into a number of other different recruitment areas and expanded into HR, projects. Interim is a very large part of what we do as well, particularly with a view to helping people start into a new field, explore, find out what an opportunity might be about. This serves not only you, the interim, but also the employer, who perhaps, and never more so than now, is uncertain as to what it is they might be looking for, because they're not entirely certain as to how they're going to be organizing their company in view of the massive changes that have taken place over the past year. Now, to start off with, I can tell you that we want you to come and register with us. Why? Because since Christmas, the number of jobs that we're handling has quadrupled. It's gone through the roof. And we need really good graduates, second jobbers, third, fourth, people with 20 years experience. We need you to come and join us. We already have a lot of people in our database, but our clients are now hungry for your skill base. So now is a really good time to come and register. Even if you're not quite ready yet, or even if you're uncertain as to what it is you want to do, come and register now, because as a part of the interview, it will help you to decide better where you're best suited to move to next time around. So the interview itself can be a huge clarifier for you and also offer you the kind of emotional support that you need when putting yourself out there to find a new job. I think right from the word go, I've always been so aware that there's a trauma attached to changing jobs. It's horrible not knowing what you're going to do next and having to say goodbye to your mates from your last company. It's a very uncertain time. And so we've always made it a very important part of our role to offer you the emotional support and feedback to you about everything that's going to make your life easier as you go through the interview process. We advise on your CVs, we advise on the opportunity that you might be looking at, and we help you draw comparisons between one role and another that you might be going forward for. So come along and see us so you have an opportunity of chewing over and discussing with an expert what it is you're looking for and its suitability for you, and what the other opportunities might be for your consideration that perhaps you'd never thought of before. But after sitting down for an hour or so with one of our consultants, suddenly there's an illumination. You suddenly see things in a subtly different way, or perhaps you see yourself in a subtly different way. It could be you suddenly realize how good you are, because certainly over all the years I've been interviewing, it's very, very rarely I've ever interviewed anyone who thinks they're better than they are. Usually people have too low an opinion of themselves. Usually someone doesn't realize how valuable they are and how much they have to offer. Why not? I suppose all of us suffer from that thing called an imposter syndrome. We all think, what, me? Me? Am I good enough for that? I'm sure there's someone else out there who might be better for it than me. Well, rubbish. This is no time to be thinking like that. This is the time for you to be analysing your CV, helping yourself forward. And in today's talk, I'm going to be helping you with some 7 points I've outlined for myself to help you go forward with your job hunt and to help clients look at the way in which they approach recruitment in a slightly different way, So it's 7 points and it's going to take just over 30 minutes. And here we go. The second message is for the employer. I'd like you to be thinking now about employing more people. You know you need more people. Everyone has lost people over the last year for one reason or another. There have been resignations or people have left for their own personal reasons. Don't hang around. There are so many good people out there right now. You can afford to start interviewing right now. And I think that both PAs and their employers and EAs and their employers are all bemused at the moment, thinking, what is it I actually need? What is it I need in the long term? How can I plan? Because everything's changing so rapidly, particularly in terms of artificial intelligence and the kind of roles that artificial intelligence can take on that a human being has been doing up until now. So there's a confusion that everyone's having to work their way through as to what you want. Well, you don't need to panic about that either, because here's the next idea. Both staff and employer think temporary, think interim, because everyone's having to find out if you make the job and if you make yourself open to interim employment, you can go and find out what's available inside the company and then work your way through the job specification, discover its inadequacies, discover its inaccuracies, discover where your skill set fits in and does the job. So many adaptations that everyone's having to make to their situation. So think interim, and then the pressure goes away. That's my big message there. And don't be proud. There's nothing wrong with being interim. If you've never been interim or a temp before, I have to say that I have massive respect for people who work in an interim role. I think it's one thing to be paid so much per annum, and you can say at the end of the year, well, I was worth it. To be measured on an hourly basis and to have to justify your employment on an hourly basis as between 10 o'clock and 11 o'clock, I was really worth my £25 an hour or whatever it is you're being paid. I was really worth it. I really earned it. That's a much harder stick to have to wield. And I think that on that basis, I have huge respect for the courage and the willingness to expose yourself to that kind of high pressure learning and having to respond quickly, easily, readily to doing things which perhaps you haven't done before, certainly with people that you're not very familiar with. It's a big challenge. And of course, like all challenges in life, the more challenges you take on, the better you're able to cope with the next challenge. So there's a huge opportunity for personal growth in putting yourself out there, having a go at something you haven't done before. You could be quite surprised at how good you are at it and also how much pleasure you derive from it. So that's another really big idea I want to get out there. So you're saying to yourself, well, she's saying we'll come and register, but what kind of person should register? Well, I'm talking to any graduate who's out there listening right now, someone who finished their course last year and has had problems trying to find employment. I'm talking to people with 1 year's experience, 2, 3, 4, 15, 20 years experience. In other words, I'm speaking to all of you, because right across the board, these opportunities are there. They might not present themselves in the way in which you're expecting. They might have different titles. They might have a very different slant on them, but in fact, you'll be using skills that you've used before. There's the old adage that, as far as a man's concerned, he'll always apply for a job. If he just thinks he fancies it, he'll have a go. And when it comes to the female equivalent, she's only going to apply for a job if she knows how to do 100% of that job right here, right now, not a problem. This isn't the same world that worked 40 years ago, where every single detail on the job specification has to have a tick against it. It just doesn't work like that anymore. If you can do 3/4 of it, then hallelujah. If you can't do the last quarter of it, fabulous. That's your opportunity to go on learning. And it's also the opportunity of the employer to look at how that area can be done differently, better, more appropriately in terms of how artificial intelligence has taken over some of the roles more intelligently because of Zoom, more intelligently because of all the different aspects that have come into the workplace over the last year. Masses of things. And some of them are such an improvement. When it comes to virtual working, I remember 40 years ago that any chairman or chief executive would have a fainting fit if you mentioned that someone might need to go to the washroom occasionally and leave their desk and have a lunch break and have a holiday. Wow, what was going to happen in the office if that person left the desk? Well, of course, that was then, but we all know now the huge advantages of having virtual communication. So let's look at some of these newly evolved jobs that are arising right now. And let's look at how you might be able to fit into them. I think it's important, if you look at your CVs, you'll always find there's one particular area that stands out as being an area of your expertise. The time spent doing that particular part of your function perhaps is greater, and the responsibility attached to it is greater. When we're talking about jobs in the future, believe me, everyone is looking for more responsibility to be taken on board. Gone are the days where it's a pleasure to ask a slave to do something. We're right up where we're looking for people who are very happy to command themselves, very happy to run their own timetable, manage their own time, see what needs doing and get on and do it. If you like, leading yourself rather than being led by a so-called boss. This is what bosses are looking for. Otherwise, it's just a pain having to explain everything. So if you've ever been called bossy, glory in it, take away any kind of, I'm being bossy again, and replace it with, I'm taking on responsibility for my role being carried out fully, and I'm taking weight off the rest of the management team. They're not having to think about it because I'm doing it for them. I'm spotting opportunities and I'm acting on them. I might be referencing them and saying, I'm doing this. If you've got any comment about it, please make it now. But you're getting ahead and doing it. And that's such a weight off the shoulders of the person who's employing you. That's the kind of thinking head that they're looking for that a robot cannot give them. You're looking for changes in patterns that a robot wouldn't be able to detect. You're looking for awareness of what your clients are after. You're looking for opportunities that could hugely enhance the relationship that your management team has with their external clients. And you can make a list of all those things and just think, where are the examples where I've done that in the past? What can I talk about at my interview that's going to make it quite clear that this is the kind of thing I'm able to do? And I've done it. And then also, have I got a measurement of just what the impact of that was, how it enhanced my past employer's situation, how it enhanced the bottom line of my past employer? That's what you need to have at your fingertips, ready and eager to be able to promote yourself at your interview situation. And as far as the clients are concerned, how are you going to be able to hook these wonderful people who are looking to, and they are, use their brains more? It's so much more fun to be using your brain and learning than just carrying out the same old. So if you want to hook these best people, you'll better be looking at your job specification and thinking how you can free up the opportunity for that person to have a learning situation, how they can look at the initial offering and see how it can help them to progress. And you, the PA, EA applying for the job, should be ready with your questions to see exactly what the answers to those questions I've just posed are. What are my opportunities to get ahead? What are my opportunities to expand my role? What are my opportunities to learn? What are my opportunities to make a larger contribution? And what's going to be required of me in order to do that? Just practical learning in the workplace? Or are there some further external qualifications that you'd like me to take? What's the answer to that one? That will tell you so much about what the real opportunity is. And it will really help the prospective employer to see where you're coming from and have their eyes open to just what their opportunity is with you or with anyone else that they're looking to hire. So that's another big one, I think, when it comes to your interview preparation. I'd like to direct both employers and PAs now to the Blue Book. This is a book that we develop on a quarterly basis. It used to be annual, but because things are changing so rapidly, it's now quarterly. And it's a project which covers not only salaries across the UK and Europe and the States, but also it outlines what it is that employers are looking for and what it is that staff are looking for. And the two things don't normally match up totally. Now, if you, the potential executive assistant, are looking for what employers are looking for, you can play your interview into their hands and make sure you're coming back and pressing the right knobs for them. And you, the employer, can make sure you're pressing the right buttons by reading that survey and seeing what the new EAs of the future are looking for and what they're valuing over and above basic pay. This could be, say, flexibility in the workplace, flexibility of time spent behind the desk, flexibility of time spent traveling. It can be any of those things and a few things more. These are the kind of aspects of employment that we're surveying. So I think take a good look at that. You can find it at bluebook at angelamortimer.com. It's a very good way of keeping abreast. And if you look at what's been coming out on the previous quarters, you can see the trend and the way it's going and play your cards accordingly. It's good for you to know what the availability is and the way it's running, as well as what the current minute is telling you. Because that way you can plan to be going with the flow rather than against it. And this applies obviously to the employer and to the EA. So there we are. And of course, this applies to graduates as well. I think that one big area that's been exploding in terms of need is HR. Well, obviously, HR has never been more exercised than it has been for the last year in working out furloughing, working out all the different ways of having to apply rules and regulations that are completely unfamiliar to everyone and having to make sure they don't cross any lines. So if that's an area that's of interest to you, if you like the meticulous work that is tied in with the law, then perhaps HR is an area that if you haven't already gone down that route, you could be looking at. And looking at also getting external qualifications to apply to be able to get to a senior level. And when I say a senior level, I'd be very surprised if in the next few years there aren't a considerable increase in the number of people who are female occupying HR directorships. Why? I think it's an area which has always been of interest and open to females. And why? Because now all the barriers are down as far as education is concerned and as far as equal opportunity is concerned, well, more or less down. It's a really open sesame for anyone who wants to really get ahead and to find themselves in the main board direction. So that's another thought for you to play with. Of course, if you're a graduate, you can be looking at this right from the outset and how you want to play your cards and looking at how you can perhaps be taking external training immediately. I'm not talking about IT upskilling. That's the whole another area. I'm talking about the mind setting and your decision making as to where your strengths lie as an individual in terms of your competency, in terms of your powers of empathy, in terms of your analytical thinking. And it's not for everyone, but for the favored few, it's a great opportunity to get ahead. And now I want to return to working flexibly. I think we can all have our ideal thoughts. I think while there are so many uncertainties in the world, it's a very good idea as you go forward for your interviews to be very open about how many days you want to be in the office and how many at home. It could be that one pattern is best to start off with, and then it evolves into another pattern. I think flexibility is absolutely paramount right now. in order that while the employers are sorting out how they can run their businesses, they have you as a stalwart support who can see that you should be guided by where the money's coming from and where the success of the company lies, rather than having any particular views, insofar as you're able to be flexible. And I think if you are in that situation where you have shared parental roles, then if you're looking for a new job, that's a really good time for you to sit down with your partner and just discuss what kind of flexibility between you can have as far as school runs, as far as that kind of coping is concerned. Sort it out before you go on interview. Don't have it hanging at the back of your mind thinking, I hope they don't ask me about that now. Just be sorted, be ready, be interview ready. When I say interview ready, have your CV ready. Let's talk about your CV right now. I think bearing in mind what it is employers are looking for, that's flexibility, adaptability, willingness to learn. That's 3 things. 4th thing, available now. 5th thing, flexible about everything, including salary, including how many days in the office. That's 5 things. Be flexible on all those 5 things. You can always work out a way of amending those once you've made yourself a valued member of staff. That's the way around to do it. So be ready with those answers. And I would be using those words in your CV, be applying them to jobs that you've occupied, particularly your most favorite jobs, because that's the one that everyone wants you to talk about. If you're talking about the job that you've most enjoyed, you're talking about a job which is going to have a lot of similarities to the one you're applying for, because that's what turns you on. So just make sure that you're well prepared with using those words and making convincing play of just how you have been able to use them in the past with actions, not thoughts, but specific actions that you've carried out which prove the underlying aspect of your personality. That's always a good way of approaching it. It means that you're demonstrating you don't just think something, you do it too. And that's what everyone wants to have by their side. Never more so at a time like this when everyone's trying to whiz out of this horrible situation we've been in and try and make everything profitable and substantial again. Everyone's coming from a bad place and looking to quickly, or as quickly as possible, get into a good place. And they want good people to go with them, with that as their priority, as well as their own priority. Everyone's rowing the same place. Everyone's wanting to go as fast as they can, as fast as they humanly can, in order to beat their competitors. So that's a way of doing it. I think that another word I'd like to use is resilience. Because there are so many uncertainties, it's going to be very difficult for anyone to say, this is how it's going to be, this is what I need, this is what I want, and this is exactly the way it's going to go. There are uncertainties, and we as human beings don't like uncertainties. We like to know what's behind that bush. We like to know what's round that corner to make sure we're going to be staying safe. So just make sure that you have some demonstrations on your CV of your resilience, your personal resilience, even if it means talking about a bad time in your life and how you worked your way through it. I'd always far prefer to have someone who's had a difficult time, they've had to work their way through and come out the other end with a big fat smile, having learned a lot and having felt they couldn't have done it any better. Far prefer that to someone who's never ever had a bad thing happen, so doesn't know how to cope with it, haven't had the practice. So look back on some of those more testing times in your life and practice how you're going to talk about it in a very positive way in terms of the person it's made you into as a result of having gone through the mill and come out the other end. That's important. Just practicing these things to yourself and practicing how you say them out loud before an interview is enormously helpful. It's a feedback for you to hear how, although that wasn't a great time, you didn't make a mess of it. You came out in a good way at the end of it. So that's great for you to hear yourself congratulating yourself, if you like. It's a good feedback for you, a positive feedback mechanism for you psychologically. And of course, it's also a brilliant way of showing your prospective employer the kind of person you are, the kind of metal you're made of. You might bend in some situations, but you're flexible and you've come out the other end and you've come out a better, bigger person as a result of it. And why should that be so important? Well, I think a resilient person is able to aid the resilience of other people. Someone who's come out the other end of a difficulty and knows and values the importance of talking in a very positive way about everything. Someone who knows that by speaking in a positive way, it helps other people to be positive. And it really makes it difficult for people not to be positive. And right now, coming out from where we've been, sounding and being and behaving in a positive way is vital. It's vital for yourselves. It's vital for the company you might be looking to join. The company that you're currently employed by is vital. I think it's an incredibly important life skill to have this way of finding out of any situation something good that's come out of it. And there's always something good if you just think about it for long enough. There's something which would never have happened had it not been for that. If it hadn't been for that change that no one wanted, certainly not you, if it hadn't been for that change of circumstances, then something else wouldn't have happened. Example, I was talking to a young person who took 10 GCSEs and decided not to take further education. She wanted to work and have money, go spend on holiday with all her friends. And then when she got tired of that, she thought, okay, I'll get a job, a serious job with training. And she became a plumber's mate. Okay, an unusual choice, but it was interesting. And then COVID came along and she wasn't able to go into people's houses anymore. The plumber could, but the mate wasn't wanted, one too many people. So she was out of a job. So what to do about that? Well, she'd already decided that the construction industry was of great interest to her. So she applied for a job and she got herself a training working drones that would go into a building without any risk of COVID catching or delivering, looking at cladding, looking at the security, looking at the safety, being able to gauge what the progress was of a job and if it was being done well, and reporting back as a document specialist, which is what her title is now, a document specialist for people who have got any kind of innovations happening or perhaps new construction work. She's going to be a supervisor in a year's time, training other people. And she's headed toward a directorship of the company. That's what the offering is. She's been there for 6 months and they've already said, this is what the offering is. If you want to go for it and some further external exams, this is your opportunity. She's thrilled. Now, that would never have happened had it not been for COVID. In a million years, it would never have happened. So that's one good thing. And there are other things too. I'm sure if you look around among your friends, you'll see how other circumstances have changed. One of them being there's going to be more opportunity for home working. Everyone wants more home working. That's a huge plus. Just imagine how much legislation we would have had to put through to try and get that and win it for you. But COVID did it for you just like that. And of course, there's some terrible things that have happened because of COVID and some people who have suffered enormously and still continue to suffer. But there have been some enormous changes that have taken place for the benefit of everyone. So let's remain aware of that and be grateful for some of these things which have happened for us all. So we're thinking about the EA of the future, and we're thinking about all those men and women who are already highly competent and who know they're going to have to acquire a lot more skills in the future. As far as the IT side of things concerned, that is evolving as we see all the time. As far as the personal upskilling is concerned, that's something I think takes some really important planning right now. You might have more than one option, so pursue more than one option. We're all going to have so many different jobs over the coming years. Don't try and anticipate the impossible to anticipate. Just do anything to start off with that's doing something that you enjoy doing and see how it evolves. So be open to what's available. Consider things you've never considered before because everything's being done differently. Embrace the opportunity of having a go at something completely different. And it could be a wonderful time to use the opportunity of interim work just to find out what it's like to work in some of these organizations. Areas that have been really going through the ceiling as far as employment is concerned have been research and medical, and of course IT. All of those offer very varied roles within. Go and have a look at all of them. Just because you've never done it before doesn't mean you shouldn't have a crack at it right now. The important thing is to show yourself as not being risk averse, that you're willing to have a go, that you want to have a go, that you want to increase your horizons. The EA of the future is going to be a person who is endlessly adapting, endlessly looking to see how they can make themselves useful, endlessly second guessing how things are going to run, and endlessly making up for the shortfall that arises out of the virtuality of our workplace. So, for example, people who aren't in the office all the time need more reassurance. They need better communication between the workplace and their home. They need to be felt important to the organization, and they need to feel as if they have relationships inside the organization. So looking at ways of enhancing that, be they during the work time or be they social, make sure that you're thinking in that kind of in the round way, because that's where EAs have always shone, in building relationships between the company and the external client. It's often been down to you to be the pleasant voice, the carrier of a message, which might not have a fabulous message attached, but to do it in a way which makes it acceptable. This has never been more important than right now. Okay, senior management might be having their Zoom calls, but you know how your conversation with their EAs can really help to just soften a blow or create another opportunity for another opportunity of speaking together and to move things forward. You know that that's available to you. So that's what we should be aiming for. So think about your intercommunication skills. Think about examples of how you've done it before. Think of what your achievement has been there. And then look at the new business areas in which you can use those skills for your own enjoyment. If you've only ever worked for a banker, you might find yourself suddenly working for a professor. Well, there's a thought. And vice versa. And you might just find that the differences are a huge refreshment to you rather than a pain. So think of it from that viewpoint. I used to interview people who had perhaps had only 3 jobs in their entire life, all within the same organization, just with 3 different bosses. How dull when you think of the opportunities now that arise where you're working for teams with multiple personalities, because everyone's got one, where you have the joy of meeting more people and having to bend with them to achieve objectives, of being a team member as opposed to one person servant, and to work as a team and find yourself developing additional skills because you have to, because the team needs them. And no one else in the team has the time, but you have the time and you have the ability to build on your existing skills. So you suddenly become an intimate member of the management team with a very important role to play. That sounds so much more exciting, doesn't it? Hugely so, than working for the same Mr. Jones. And how marvelous not to do shorthand all the time. It's a great plus if you have it, because you can be quick and you can be very, very private. But you really don't need it, do you? I mean, you can just record things, it's done, it's there for you. A wonderful way of saving time, saving energy, and also getting the nuance in someone's tone of voice, not just the flat words, which really tell you what the person's thinking rather than just what they're saying. Words can be, flat words on a piece of paper can be very misleading as to just what someone's thinking and saying. As we know, as we listen to our various political leaders, you can see where they're coming from, you can see where they're going to. So don't forget that skill. It's such an important one for you. So now it's time for me to sign off. I wish you all an enormous amount of good fortune. I hope you found the 7 points I've made for you helpful, useful, that you can use them to your advantage. And look forward very much indeed to helping you all along your way in the next step of your job. Bye.